So welcome, 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 our brilliant and beloved colleague, Rucha. We so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity in all that you're doing for so many. And as always at Setsi, we begin all conversations by giving thanks to our creator, by giving thanks to the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We give thanks to all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So Rucha, can you please introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers and share a bit about your remarkable work?
Sure. Thanks so much for the beautiful introduction, Victor. Very powerful. Hi, everyone. My name is Rucha Pande, and I am the COO at Mantra4CHANGE. It's an NGO that works out of India. I'm also heading another research and design lab. It's called CoLab, where we aim to connect people to learn and share. I think exactly what you said earlier, Victor, as well. So these are the two initiatives that I'll be talking about. But before I get to the initiatives that I talk about, a little bit about myself. I live with a family of 4 people here in Bangalore. I have been working with this organization since 2017. And I think that talks a little bit about how I deeply believe in starting something or working with something that you really believe in and then trying to see it through. On a personal side, I also love to do art, read books, paint, and go for walks. Anywhere where there are trees and lakes is my happy place. So that's a little bit about me. Coming to the work that we do in India. So before we get to the work, I'll talk a little bit about the context of India and education specifically in India. And one of the challenges that we're facing today is it's a trifold challenge actually of education in India. First of all, the scale of education. We have 1.5 million government schools in India. And that's just one part of the picture, right? The second thing is the kind of diversity that we have in the country. If you just move a couple of 100 kilometers, then religions have changed, languages have changed, cultural practices have changed. There's so much cultural diversity across the country, and that's something that we need to keep in mind. And third is that unfortunately, government schools have been declining in terms of quality over the last couple of years and are today not the first choice for many parents in the country. And so this trifold sort of a context is something that we operate in and would like to do something about. And our vision is, how do we really imagine children getting quality education, getting enriching learning experience wherever they're coming from and whatever they want to do in their lives. And that's essentially the vision that we're working towards. Now, to make that happen, we recognize that many pieces need to come together. It's almost like a puzzle that needs to come together. You need to have curriculum, you need to have teacher development, you need to have policies, a bunch of these things that come together in a bigger picture. That's essentially what we do at Mantra4CHANGE. We work with state governments, with government schools to, one, develop this bigger picture that we're trying to work towards together. Second, we mobilize different partners, different communities, different philanthropists as well to kind of fit in these different pieces. It's like a human body. The nose doesn't grow with the other ear, and the hands also growing. They all have to grow together. And that's the work that we do. How do we identify what are the pieces that need to come together and play the role of actually bringing these people together, helping them work together collaboratively, so that at the end of the day, our government schools improve and our children get enriching experiences wherever they are in India. So that's a little bit about the work that we do, and I'll pause for any questions that you have.
That is beautiful. What a remarkable journey. 1.5 million schools. I can't even imagine, in terms of educational attainment, the level of bureaucracy and logistics and planning and multi-stakeholder engagement and consultation. So that is daunting but inspiring work. And a perfect segue to my next question. What's inspiring you right now? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at night?
Oh, I think the thing that has been inspiring me since the very beginning has not changed. And it's just when you see somebody who is facing a challenge and is feeling powerless about addressing that challenge. And can you do something to help that person realize that they have the power to do something about the challenge that they're facing. That's been incredibly inspiring for me from the beginning. And it's not just to do with education, it's to do with women in households, it's to do with parents, it's to do with children. All of these, a lot of times we get bogged down by the kinds of challenges that we face, and we sometimes forget the power that we already have as individuals and communities. And as part of our work, that's exactly what we're trying to do. We're not trying to bring in a solution and say we're the superheroes and do what we say. What we're trying to say is, look, you're already a community that has a ton of experiences, that has wisdom. How do we help you do what you can already do and solve your challenges that you're facing? That's incredibly inspiring for me, is if I'm able to play a role in somebody's life and help them realize the power that they already have. That's the number one thing that inspires me every day.
That's incredible. I always love when folks do their work with humility and integrity and just don't see themselves as the panacea to the problem, but recognize that all problem solving is multifaceted and sometimes intergenerational. And these are generational struggles. So once again, I just really appreciate the role that you play within your vibrant and dynamic ecosystem. So my next question is, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and what are some of the approaches you and your colleagues are taking to overcome some of these challenges and barriers?
Oh, we face challenges every day, and I think that's just the nature of the space that we are in. Um, but broadly, I would say three types or three layers of challenges. One is, since it's government schools that we're looking at, there is this whole idea of how do you really engage government actors, how do you engage bureaucrats, how do you deal with even challenges that they have. There are people who want to do good work, but they're also living with their own constraints. So number one challenge is, how do you really work with the government? And for that, we've been engaging in co-creation. We don't take a solution and say implement the solution. We take questions, we take ideas, we take suggestions. We take I think we take the space of asking, what do you aim to do, and what can we do together to reach there? And so that's how we kind of try and address that challenge. We also take a multi-year approach, because working with governments or working at this scale is not it's not a sprint. It's not a short-term program. It's something that you need to dedicate. I think you said generations, so completely agree with you. It takes a long time. The second challenge is, like I mentioned earlier, scale and diversity of the country. And it's really humbling for us, because we recognize that that's not something we can address all on our own. And so, like my colleague was mentioning earlier, is how do we really then engage in collective action? If Mantra is sitting in Bangalore, a city in Karnataka, in southern India, how we don't have to go to northern India and work in a city there. How can we identify somebody who already cares about a geography in northern India, who's already been there for a while? And how do we then work together so that we're able to learn from each other and still address all of these contextual realities of the field that we live in? So that's the second challenge, about diversity and scale. And we address that by really engage in collective action and not always thinking, oh, we have to go there, but who is already there and how can we kind of work with them, is the question that we ask. The third challenge is that for from decades, we've had some wonderful policies in education in India. They have talked about what kind of curriculum we'll need to have, what kind of community engagement we need to have, what kind of quality standards we need to have in schools. But there's also been a gap in implementing that policy. So somewhere we do have that vision, we do have that idea of what good education could look like, but at the same time, there's difficulty in seeing that on the ground. And so how we address that is, can we break down some of these big ideas into small actionable projects that school leaders, teachers, parents are able to do? I'll take an example. We talk about, oh, communities need to be engaged and schools need to be centers of learning, and that's a great idea. But what a school leader wants to know is, how do I implement a good parent teacher meeting? What kind of an agenda do I cover in this parent teacher meeting? What kind of questions do I ask the parents? How do I even invite parents to school in the first place? Things like that. So can we break down some of these big goals and big ideas into small actionable steps that really try and bridge this policy and implementation gap? So a glimpse into the kinds of challenges that we deal with and how we address them.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing just the context around the parents' engagements and on all the little facets of educational attainment. It's so important to ensure of positive youth developments. So my next question is, do you have a set of key priorities right now in your work you'd like to share with our community of practice?
Yes, one big priority right now, and it kind of feeds off of something I mentioned earlier, is we're looking at this kind of scale and diversity in India, right? And the only way to do it is how can we really create a movement of not just civil society organizations, but also parents, teachers, students, communities who are every day around these schools, donors, philanthropists, governments. How do we create a movement where all of these actors really care about education and try and make a difference in their own geographies or in their own spaces? And trying to create that nationwide movement and catalyzing different actors towards that is our number one priority. And we've begun that by, in the phase one, focusing on districts in India and how do we really partner with organizations across multiple districts, because districts are a great unit. They're not too big like a state, nor are they too small to also then develop some policy or structural changes. So how can we really energize a good amount of districts across the country that are able to work with the government and show improvement at the school level? So that's our number one priority right now.
So helpful. So perfect segue to my second last question. In terms of your ultimate goal, what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
It's a good question. When we close our eyes and think, what do we really want to see? It's three things that have come to our minds. Number one is children enjoying in their schools, whether it's they're learning math or playing with their children, or whether they're painting or drawing or engaging in art. They're really enjoying coming to school. They look forward to learning and sharing with their friends and teachers. So that's number one, joyful children and joyful classrooms. Number two is parents thinking about government schools as a first option. Today, it's the last option. So, how can we make government schools a good first option for them to send their children to? That's something that we really think is possible and could be game changing for our country as well. The third thing is to make all of this happen is all of these actors, parents, teachers, school leaders, have the agency to recognize what their school needs and also then drive that change instead of maybe getting bogged down by the challenges that they're facing. How can they also recognize these small steps that they can also take to make their schools better? So them recognizing the agency that they have to lead change in their schools. So these three things.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Yes, definitely. And I think it brings us to a full circle as well, because you mentioned this in the introduction. Two things that I'd like to connect with all of you watching here is one, come and learn together, because there are things that we are trying out that are working, that are not working. There are things that you're probably trying out in your own geographies that are working or not working. And how do we kind of learn from each other? That's my number one thing. Second is how can we amplify each other's stories? And I think creating videos like these, sharing our stories is a great step towards that. But that's my second call to action is how might we amplify each other's stories even further, not just for our organizations, but I think for so many people and communities to recognize that there is good change happening and there is good work happening and there is hope for the future. So how can we kind of amplify these stories of change and bring hope to communities?
Rusha, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, your leadership, your authenticity, and your visionary action. I really appreciate all that you're doing for so many. And as always at Setsi, we close this conversation the way it began, by giving thanks to our creator, the original stewards, the various lands we on, all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Rusha. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Victor. Good to meet you.